You're listening to Bigfoot Society podcast, hosted by our captain, Jeremiah Byron, where it's all Bigfoot all the time. Have you ever had the urge to do more, to be more? Now you can by joining Bigfoot Society on the Patreon. Get ad-free episodes and even member-only episodes. Take part in movie night and even live video chats. Interact behind the scenes with Jeremiah and other Patreon members like me, Leia. The powerful podcast goes on, and you may contribute a verse in our Patreon community. Carpe diem. Seize the day, Bigfooters, and make your lives extraordinary.
Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. At Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Mr. Ceb Land today. He's a listener from Hawaii who reached out, but he has many encounters from his time in the Pacific Northwest that he's going to share. So it's going to be an exciting show with lots of different things. But Ceb, welcome to the show. How's it going tonight?
Hey, terrific. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, man, I'm excited to see where this one is going to go. I've seen a little bit from your sign up, and it's going to get pretty wild. So, Ceb, go ahead. I'm going to give you the floor, my friend, and take us back to where we need to be and what we need to know.
Right on. Will do. So all things Sasquatch. I was as a teenager, I was living up in Alaska, and that was when I think I first started hearing about Sasquatch, from family members, people in the area who, well-respected people. One of my teachers, amazing native man who's an incredible carver, just said here. I kept hearing things and realizing, okay, this is real, So I just got a real strong interest in it back then. I always lived by choice. By my parents' choice. Growing up, we lived pretty out there in some pretty out there places. Pretty remote places. And then as an adult, I just kind of continued that myself. Love living close to nature. So, and living in Northeastern Washington in my 20s, I got to know a lot of people out there who had encounter experiences, and just knew it was real. For me, though, I didn't have any real encounters until probably about 8 years ago, I'd guess, when I was living outside of Eugene, Oregon. And with the rise of podcasts and everything, I'd gotten really into listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. I was just really enjoying hearing everyone's all these encounter stories and stuff. So I just really developed, really piqued my interest in looking more and more into Sasquatch stuff. And so my first encounter was when just for reference sake, I was living kind of in the woods. I built a yurt, which if listeners are familiar with what a yurt is, it's kind of like a large tent home. Very, very thin walls, kind of like a canvas walls over a frame. So I was living in that, and and a 3 o'clock in the morning, a Sasquatch woke me up, standing right outside my wall, right behind me. But what's interesting about this is I woke up from a dream where the Sasquatch was reaching its arm over my body, like it had just reached its arm through the tent, fully over my whole body. And so I woke up just really startled, and kind of laid there for a split second, like, oh, that was a terrifying dream, and then it vocalized just really loud right behind my head, right on the other side of the tent wall. It vocalized kind of a like a ooh, wow, just huge sound. And yeah, when I like, just to throw in there, like when I explained this to people before, it's kind of like if you heard an elephant make it sound, you wouldn't think that it was like something smaller. When a sound kind of communicates the size of something, especially I think that's true with the Sasquatch, because I mean it was just a humongous sound. And when it did that, I got the mental communication of kind of translated, like my psyche just translated in a way like exactly what it was saying. And it was saying, here I am in this context with this like this meaning of like, you've been wondering about us, you've been wondering about me, right? So here I am. And so yeah, it vocalized 3 times the same sound, same thing. Just a few seconds of break in between each one, and yeah, and then I could just heard it kind of walk away real quickly, and so that was my first thing, and man, that just blew the doors off for me. I mean, it made it so real, yeah, I had already believed in this stuff, but it just like really made it real, especially with the kind of mental communication aspect of it. It just it just kind of showed me they're on this other level, it's like a psychic level, like it's pretty profound. But that was my first encounter. I just knew that they're around my area, and I had a couple more encounters right in that area where they'd be walking. I'd go out at night, and one would be walking by. I could hear them just making themselves really well known, like loudly breathing and breaking branches and stomping through. And so yeah, I was kind of had some cool experiences there. I started getting into kind of really seeking this stuff out more. One of my best friends has a similar interest, real strong interest. So he and I did one really significant camping trip that we got incredible results. Was we went 4-wheeling. I had like a Toyota Land Cruiser, just got go anywhere. So we went 4-wheeling up kind of the south side of Mount Adams in Washington State. It's like southern Washington State. Listeners, if they're familiar, Mount Adams is like, there's that's on the north side of that is where it's on the east side of that mountain range or mountain is the East Eddy Ranch. There's like a whole lot of UFO phenomenon happens around there. People like go and camp just because it's almost every night you can watch it. So we did see some of that for sure. But we were more in a really, really remote area at the base of Mount Adams. Really, really hard to get to, unless you just have a super duper 4-wheel drive. So we got out there, brought tons of apples, camped out, and we just had the amazing privilege of just getting totally surrounded by them, probably like a family group, all night long, like from the second it got dark till 4 a.m. And it was an amazing experience. Neither of us really felt any fear whatsoever. We didn't feel like we were being told to leave. What it really felt like was that there was the parents were there. So my friend and I both, just as we communicated about all this afterwards, and like a bit we communicated during the time it was happening, but all of our instincts about what each of us felt like and thought was happening were identical. So I definitely give that some credit. But it felt like there was like a mom and dad, and then their adolescent, teenage or whatever, the younger ones, that were really having fun yelling at us and doing all their different calls. And so it was just, our experience was a lot like what there's like a famous recording by a guy where he keeps calling back to them. You're familiar with what I'm talking about? It's like an old recording.
Is it the Sierra Sounds?
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
yeah,
and he keeps calling back. He keeps calling back to them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's like a lot of what we experienced that night. Was they would do some crazy call. We would do it back. They would do something else. We would try to do that call back. And it was like tons of fun. It was just a lot of fun. And it went on for hours. We brought, here's a really interesting thing that happened that night, was we brought about, I'd say 7 apples. We'd stopped at the store on the way there. We got about 7 apples. We picked these rocks. There was like this kind of a river, a stream bank. And we picked there was these big boulders. And so we balanced 1 apple on top of each boulder as kind of a gifting thing, right? And right when it got dark, even before we heard them make a call, we were like, just had a feeling, right? There's just a feeling in the air. And so where we'd set those apples, probably only like 50 yards away from where we're starting our fire. So it's just getting dark, and I was like, hey, and we'd only set the apples there like an hour before, half an hour before, right? So I was like, hey, let's just peek over there. So we peeked over there, and 2 of the apples were missing. Apples that we had set on certain rocks had been moved to be balanced on other rocks that we did not set them on. So that was like immediately, it was really exciting. We just knew, like, you could tell, they were there. Feeling was in the air, really strong. And so that's how it started. That was just a fantastic, fantastic night. When we got up in the morning, they had left 2 apples behind. So it's kind of, this feeling was like, oh, hey, 1 for each of us. So that was a really amazing experience. Some of my other experiences, like one in particular that is really worthy of sharing, does get a little bit, I think, outside of the box of normality for maybe a lot of listeners. And I'd have to kind of like lead into it with a little bit of explanation. And that goes like this, is that, when I was a teenager, my grandfather told me some things, kind of opened my eyes to some things about his experiences with, my grandfather had practiced and been able to have out-of-body experiences. So he explained that to me when I was like 15 years old. And so that really piqued my interest. I did this. I kind of followed in his, I was so interested in it, you know, that I got books on the subject, practiced, did a lot of relaxation exercises, trying to get to where I could do that too, as well, have out of body experiences. So I accomplished it. I've had a lot of them in my life for 25 years now. And so I've met up with every deceased friend and relative that I've had that has passed away. It's very normal for me now. And generally, yeah, a great thing, great aspect of my life. But I did have an encounter where I met with 3 Sasquatch while I was outside of my body. And that was really phenomenal and worth sharing. I had left my body, and this was shortly after my stepfather had passed away. So I left my body one night, went outside, and my stepfather walked up to me, and we had an amazing reunion. We talked, we hugged. It was really a beautiful thing to be reunited with them and check in with them. And so after that ended, he had to leave, and I just continued on and kind of went for a walk, basically out of my body. And so I was kind of out in the woods and fields that were nearby where I lived, and I saw 3 Sasquatch, and I was pretty excited, and because I'm outside of my body, so I'm like, wow, this is cool. I yelled towards them, and I kind of more or less kind of was like pleading or something, I was kind of like asking for them to approach me, and they did. And so that there was 2 younger Sasquatch, like and not that much smaller. They were just younger than the main one, the older one. The older one had kind of grayish hair in his beard, so that's in his like facial hair. So that's why I'd say he was older. And but they were all 3 males, and they came right up to me. And the older one communicated mentally to me, and he said, "You need to understand one thing. We are in no way evil. We're just very upset with what humanity is doing to the natural world." That's the gist of it, right? Maybe I got a word wrong, but I mean, that was the direct message that came to me. And so I was like, okay, I get it. And they turned and walked away. And, I've always felt like that was like, that Sasquatch was very correct in the fact that is what I needed to hear, because I think that there was a big part of me that did have some fear, some deep kind of fear around them, because of, there's just so many stories I've heard about, hunters getting their necks broken, or, just like people missing 411 type stuff. Just afraid that there's some 900-pound, 9-foot tall, dude in the woods is going to rip my head off, if they don't like that I'm out there or whatever. So, so I did have that fear, but I think that encounter, that particular Sasquatch, that guy just kind of spoke to that in me, addressed it, and it was good. It was good. Now, there's other we could say cryptids, or I would prefer to say, like, there's these beings of nature is kind of how I put it. There's these other beings of nature. I think Sasquatch is kind of one of them. So another example would be these the like little people elves, basically. Like in Norway, they call them the Lily folk. In Hawaii, here where I live, they call them the Menehune. Every culture around the world, has had some name for these little guys. And I've had encounters with them as well. The very first thing that ever happened to me, kind of more paranormal thing that happened to me, was when I was a child living here in Hawaii, probably about only 6 years old probably. And I encountered probably 5 or 6 of these little elf guys who were, myself as a 6-year-old, I was just a normal 6-year-old in size, right? But these guys were like half my size, so it was very, very weird to me, almost traumatic, because they didn't do anything to me. They kind of almost played a game as though like they were surrounding me, and it was really kind of funny and fun for them. And it just scared me, so they didn't touch me. They didn't block me or anything, but I ran past them. I ran straight back to our home. And so yeah, I've had encounters with those little guys. There's a lot more, but let's just stop there. Those are just kind of a good overview of a lot of crazy stuff. So
Yeah, absolutely, man. That is some wild stuff for sure. When you were talking about your first one with the yurt, and you said it was outside Eugene in the woods.
yes.
Was it near a certain area, or to the east, to the west, anything like that?
Yeah, it was to the west. It was to the west, kind of closer to the Coast Range.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of activity out there in the Coast Range. And I know, several other people living out there who've had pretty wild encounters. But yeah, so west of Eugene.
Cool. Yeah, there's some coast has some wild stuff happen. When you had heard the mental communication, when you heard that, did you actually hear the voice of something say that, "Here I am, you've been wondering about us, so here I am"?
I heard "here I am." Okay. And the connotation, the meaning behind it, I got the meaning as well, which just meant like, hey, you've been wondering, so here,
Interesting.
It's like the tone, right, of what it was saying. But I heard that mentally, at the same time I was hearing it physically, yell, that huge, sound it was doing.
That's really interesting. Were there any interesting details or things about the voice that you heard that in? How it was talking or anything like that?
No, not really. And it's the same with the other experience where it said, the older Sasquatch said, you need to understand one thing, we are in no way evil. We're just very upset. Both of those experiences, the message was just loud and clear in my mind, loud and clear English, just makes perfect sense. No, it's weird. It's a weird thing with kind of telepathy, right? Like that. Like, it just sounds totally normal. I had another time where a Sasquatch communicated with me telepathically, and that was here in Hawaii, actually, where I was kind of in a half out of body state, and I could see one up the mountain from me, like way up the mountain. Like I could see where it was speaking from, but it was a really long ways away, but it was speaking telepathically. And it said, to me. It said, "We are here because we're everywhere." And I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay. They're here," you know? Which, you know, I live at the base of a mountain that it just, the whole island is one big mountain, basically, you know? So it goes up to 14,000, I believe 14,000 feet or 11, or I don't know. One of those, I think 11, over 11,000 feet. It goes way up. But yeah, there's just tons of uninhabited land up there. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if there's some running around living up there. A lot of cave systems up there, but yeah, every time they do that kind of mental communication that I've experienced, the few times that I have, it's just, yeah, nothing distinguishingly off or strange about it.
Gotcha. So you've had visuals multiple times when you've had out of body experiences, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been a time when you've had a visual of any kind when you were not in the middle of a out of body experience?
No, just other than just barely kind of through the trees one time, but it wasn't very significant. It's like I knew exactly where it was and I could see something moving, and he was making himself really well known. You know, making a lot of grunts and breaking stuff and moving through the area, but it was dark. It was too dark to see much. I could just see kind of his shape moving, you know?
Absolutely. So you had talked about how you did have some UFO experiences up in Mount Adams. Oh yeah.
There and many, many other times in many other places. I've seen them. I've seen ships in the daytime. I've seen them at night. I've seen them, you know, tons and tons of times.
Do you think
I've been up on one when I was out of my body?
Okay.
As well.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was great. It was the person on it was not a little green man or an alien or anything. It was like a human being, who was very, I would say, like kind of enlightened in his presence, very, very kind, very wise. And yeah, I just saw, I made the choice to go up on the ship. I asked to go up on the ship because I was out of my body and I saw the ship flying overhead, you know, just like a bright orb of light in the sky, like a really brighter than any of the stars, right? Just lower altitude. That's usually how I see them, is, you know, that they're just a very bright light, singular light at a lower altitude, cruising through the sky. In that case, I saw one, and I just requested I was like, hey, I'm out of my body. There's no limitation. I should be able to just go up to it. And I asked to go up to it, and then I was just pulled up to it at a really fast rate.
When you were up there, the beings that were inside that just looked like normal humans, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Did they look like tall Nordics or anything like that? Or?
No.
Okay.
No, this guy and I've met this guy actually at another time as well. You know, because in my out of body travel and stuff, I've met with all my deceased friends and relatives. I've met with people that I would put in a higher class of like spiritual guides. They're just like a lot wiser, they have this profound presence, this enormous amount of like love and compassion and care and just super intelligence. He was like one of them. And I met many, many beings like that, like him, in these out of body experiences.
Thinking back to the times that you've seen Sasquatch in your experiences, do they look similar to how they're described by individuals that see them just out in the forest, or did they look a little different than what an actual physical encounter is usually described as?
No, I would say they look identical to what people say. There's also some photographs going around. There's a guy, you might know his name, but he took some incredible photographs of them, really good quality, like zoom lens photographs of a couple Sasquatch's faces. He this is crazy guy. He gets in a ghillie suit and tries to sneak up on him for weeks on end in the snow up in northern Canada. You know that guy?
Oh.
He made a documentary about his efforts.
Oh, is it Todd Standing?
That's it.
Hey,
that guy.
yeah.
Dude, he's wild. But I mean,
yeah.
But I don't.
Yeah.
I think his photographs, stand on their own legs. Because I'd say they look like that. They're facially. The males that I saw looked a lot like that.
Oh, okay, really? That's interesting.
Facially,
okay.
but then physically, they look like I said, they look like if you stand up a sheet of plywood, a 4x8 sheet of plywood. They're at least 8 feet tall and at least 4 feet wide. They're just massive. So my experience of being right in front of them, and even though I was out of my body, it's being out of your body is just it's just like being in your body. I mean, everything looks the same. You're having a full experience, just as if you were in your body. So they look fully physical to me, and they're huge, and their energy, their presence is very kind of abrasive, rough, gruff, pretty scary. Just be in the intimidation factor.
Sure.
Of how huge they are.
Yeah.
And how serious they are too.
When you were out with your friend, would he also have out of body experiences?
No, he doesn't have them. No, he's very interested in the subject though. And he showed me that place. He had gone out there before with another friend of ours and was like, dude, we got to go out here. This place is amazing. He had the same intuitive sense as me as far as what was going on. We both knew for that night when they were surrounding us, they were all, I would say the mom and the 2 or 3 younger ones were all over to our right. In some trees to our right. But the big daddy had moved around to our left and was way closer to us. He was just sitting just behind this little pile of rocks, probably within 30 yards of us or less, and not making a sound. But we both knew it. In the moment, I'm just kind of whispering into him. I'm like, hey, where the big daddy is? And he's like, he's right over there, bro. He's right there. We both knew it. We could just sense it. It was just really, really a trip how that,
Have you ever met any other people that have also experienced that, where they had a out-of-body experience and then they had connections with Sasquatch?
No, my grandfather was only one of the only people. I'd say maybe I met 1 or 2 other people who have had regular out-of-body experiences. But my grandfather didn't have anything like that happen that I know of. He just told me about a few things but to answer your question, no.
So the big question, of course, that we usually bring up is, doing this research and having, connected in different ways. Have you come to an idea of what it is that we're dealing with what Sasquatch actually is?
absolutely. Like I definitely have a perspective and opinion on that. And it might be a little different. Because I think we kind of have to look at ourselves to answer it more. Like, for example, here's what I mean. Like, people could ask the question, well, are they physical, or, because a lot of people tell their experiences of how they can kind of like more or less disappear, right? Like, people like, oh, they're made footprints and then they disappeared, or the footprints ended, they disappeared, or they saw like a ball of light traveling through the forest and then it became a Sasquatch. There's all these kind of out there things. So what I mean by looking at ourselves is kind of like looking at our own perception, our own understanding of like what we think physical reality is. It's a subjective like opinion, really, backed by an understanding of science and modern thinking, right? I just look at it like this. I look at it as Sasquatches are beings, probably a lot similar to us. But I think that they're more in touch with their ability to do things that we might see as like supernatural, And for example, like I think they can turn invisible based off kind of controlling their own vibrational rate. They can disappear from our eyes, right? Because our eyes are only picking up a certain bandwidth of vibration, energy, frequency, right? Of light. Our eyes are only picking up a certain bandwidth of that at all times. So I think that these beings of nature, these elves or these Menehune or these Sasquatch or these different beings of nature can adjust their own frequency in a way, they're in touch with that. I think it's totally possible for humans to we're capable of that as well. Just like using only a certain amount of our brain capacity, it's a similar thing like that. I think there's a lot of capacities that we have latent abilities that we have that we're not using, I can't answer it. I don't know. I can't speak for all of them. Like I think that they're also kind of like humans in the sense that there's good ones and there's bad ones, or there's ones that are very hurt, traumatized. Like maybe there's ones that had one of their loved ones, family members, murdered by the military or a hunter. Who knows what happened? Maybe there's ones that are really angry. But then I think there's a lot of them that are good. I don't know about saying good or bad. I just think there's ones that are very, very highly aware and generally not trying to do any harm whatsoever.
Exactly. Let me throw this. I have the theory, and I bring it up every once in a while. I'm just curious what your thoughts are, if you have any. From taking a lot of encounters over the last multiple years, I've kind of noticed a bit of some similarities, and sometimes I wonder if perhaps when a human individual gets in close contact with, and not even having a visual, just in close contact with them, if that almost can unlock some latent ability that we didn't know we had, or kind of unlocks a part of our brain or something like that. I don't know if that sounds a little crazy, or if that's anything maybe you've kind of thought of before, if you had any thoughts about that.
Well, it definitely knocks down the wall of, I think that we're it's so natural for us to have kind of a certain firewall of disbelief. And so, like I said, and when the first time I actually encountered one, I consciously totally believed that they were real. I'd heard a bunch of stories from people that I knew well and totally trusted that what they're saying is 100% truthful. But even though I believed in all that and I'd heard from these people, it still was huge for me when I had one right close to me yell, that first encounter thing that I had. So yeah, I agree. I totally agree with what you're saying. It just kind of knocks down a wall of disbelief that you didn't even know was there. You know what I mean? It does kind of open you up more to a different, like you kind of do walk through the world a little differently because yeah, I'd say I'm a way more open, like open kind of person now, like I'm not going to shoot anything down. I'm going to question it and think about it, but I'm not going to like discredit it. If discredit something someone says as though I think I have the right answer and they don't,
Oh yeah. I would say, I've never had a close-up experience like you've had. I have heard stuff in the woods in Oregon, and even experiencing that, I mean, yeah, it does open you up to other stuff. It's like,
but it definitely, and I'd be interested if you could corroborate this based off like experiences that you've had. But one thing it did give me is that ability to tell. I can feel when they're around, and like I'll share two funny things real quick.
Okay.
So I was like driving through the desolate road wintertime in Montana, driving along, and I just had a feeling like, man, I bet there's Sasquatch right around here, so this is like late afternoon, and I like pull over. There's like no one on the roads out there, just snowy. I pull over, go pee or whatever, and I just start doing some calls, right? I'm just like, oh, woo, like calling out as loud as I can. And boom, just one starts doing some really loud tree knocks, like, right up close by,
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, man, how cool. I knew, confirmed, boom. I could feel that one was in the area. So that's why I stopped, Another time this is so funny because a good friend of mine had just bought this property. It's kind of out in that coast range of Oregon, kind of remote, and so he was having like a kind of a property warming, like a party, get together. So we got a fire going, and we're all hanging out, having some beers, and boom, I just get this feeling there's a Sasquatch around. Like I just felt it really strong. I commented to one of my friends. He just kind of laughed at me. Like, this is my friend who had the property. I'm like, hey, bro, there's a Sasquatch on your property. I could feel because I heard I also heard some branches break right up the hill from us.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt it. Then I heard those branches break, and I was like, oh man, it's on. The one is here. So he laughed at me, which I don't care. We're really good friends, but it's just outside of too far out for him, right? So what happens next? We're just standing by the fire, chilling, and no wind at all, no wind. And that Sasquatch pushed a tree over on that hillside that was a big tree, man. It was like big. You could hear it coming down. Like you could hear you could hear like the roots break. You could hear it swinging through the branches of the other trees and just boom, hit, shit, it was probably it's probably 80-foot tall tree, probably a good at least good 3 feet diameter, like a big tree. And So yeah, so then I was like, oh yeah, I was like, I told you, you know. And of course they all have total cognitive dissonance. Like maybe one of like 5 or 6 of my friends had his eyes wide open, like actually, you know, believing me in my take on it, but the others were just like, they couldn't process it, you know.
Oh, that's wild.
But yeah,
man.
It gave me that, like, I can tell when they're around, you know.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I've heard, well, I think I've heard similar things to that. I don't know if I've heard that exact same thing where you're really tuned in after you have that encounter. I'd be curious if other people have that ability too, if they want to put that in the comments as well. But if there are listeners that are like, man, I would really love to try to have a Sasquatch encounter, are there things that you recommend people to do or try in order to, you know, try to get encounters with these creatures?
It's the same, the answer is the same exact answer when it comes to out of body experience and stuff like that. Is anything that you want, that you desire, any experience you feel like, man, that might add to me, that might be really cool, is I just fully believe it's like prayer, like a sincere request. It's like if you knock, the door will be opened. If you seek, you shall find. You just have to like sincerely be interested. And then, I mean, definitely if you go out to a area where they might be, and just have a campfire, camp out, you know, have that, if you have that desire in your heart, I feel like they know. It's the same thing as like if you want to meet your spiritual guides, you know. I wanted a long time ago, I had heard about spiritual guides. I wanted to meet them. I requested it, and I've met a bunch of them now, you know. So I really believe in that 100%, is that you just ask. If you're sincerely ask, you're open to it. There's no need to be afraid, in my opinion. Nothing to be afraid of. Yeah.
That's very interesting. It definitely echoes other things that I've heard as well with you know, some people, you know, prayer or manifesting or having a pure intention. There's all sorts of things that kind of have similar themes, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it's like prayer. You call it prayer, and I just think it's like, you know, just like, I think what blocks people in all kinds of ways is like a sense of like, from spiritual things too, is like maybe thinking, oh, maybe I'm not worthy, or maybe I'm not pure enough, or maybe this or that or whatever. And I just think that's all baloney, you know. You just, if you're really interested, if you know that you're interested in something, and just go and seek it out, and you'll, you know, request it in any way or shape or fashion you like, and you know, it'll happen if you just get out there a little.
Yeah, and that's right. That's another huge part of it, is you pretty much have to go like you're going camping, but let people know where you are too, you know.
Yeah.
Be safe about it, of course. You know, you kind of,
yeah.
I think you had mentioned missing 411 for a minute or two earlier.
I did. Yeah, I mentioned that, which is why I had a little fear in me, you know, a little like concern about, you know, hope they're not gonna, you know, nice or whatever, not gonna run me out. But you know, I think a lot of those stories, like I've heard so many stories, right? A lot of hunters that have gone out, gotten just absolute scared, and you know, I think they don't like guns. I don't think they like guns. I think that's like their home. They got kids out there, you know. I don't think, and they know what they are. And, you know, I don't have a gun right now. I think I might get one just to keep it home in case someone tries to break in or whatever. But I'm not going to bring a gun out in the woods if I'm going or to see some Sasquatch. There's no way, no how, you know. And I'm not going to try to fool them with cameras either. Like, they're too smart, man. They're too wise. They're too tuned in. They know your heart's intent. That's my opinion. I feel like they can look right through you. You should know that if you're gonna seek them out. I would say do not bring a gun, unless it's just for like some cougar. If you're scared of like a wildcat or something else, you know, maybe then you want a gun. I think if you brought a gun, you're like, hey, Sasquatch, look, I got this gun, but I never ever point it at you, just in case there's a cougar or something. So don't get the wrong. Then I think they'd understand that. You know, I don't think they'd take it. I don't think they'd take it the wrong way. But
I know multiple people that do that actually, where they always have that conversation because there's so many cougars around that they're like, yeah, this is for the cats.
I almost got killed by a cougar one time. I got a real close face off with a cougar, and it is unreal how big they are, dude. Unreal how big that one was. It was huge. It could have killed me so quick. I'm 6'1", you know, 180, you know, it could have just wiped me out.
And you were just in the woods, like you weren't in a car?
I was in the woods, sleeping under the ground, sleeping under the trees, no tent. And it ran up on me, but it woke me up, the sound of it approaching. And I just got to my feet just in time to shine my really bright flashlight right in its eyes. I turned the light on right in its eyes, and it skidded to a stop, like within 2 feet of me.
Oh my, that was so close. Wow. It would have really taken you out, dude. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. My girlfriend at the time was kind of a hypochondriac, and I'd really had to convince her to hike up there with me. So I screamed when I turned on the flashlight, and it ran off. And then she woke up, and she was like, what are you doing? Like, oh, you woke me up. What the, like, kind of like very angry girlfriend kind of vibes.
Right.
And I just didn't tell her. I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I woke you up. I don't know. I just heard something. She's like, oh. She was all mad.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't have gone well if you'd actually told her what happened.
So I just laid down. I laid in there all night with my knife and my flashlight and just stayed awake all night just listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's so crazy, dude. Wow. Yeah, you got to be prepared out there, especially in the Pacific Northwest. Ceb, this has been such an enjoyable conversation. In a viewpoint that I don't think we've ever actually had on the show before. So I'm glad that you came on. Did you have any other closing thoughts or things that you would want to share as we start to wind the show down?
I just encourage anyone to just if you're interested in this stuff, do it for yourself. Try to get out somewhere and seek it out. Go some really remote, beautiful places too. I have such a love for going into the real deep backcountry because it really doesn't take long. You can get to places that people just don't go. And it's really beautiful out there, just even if you don't see a Sasquatch, it's just gorgeous, So yeah, I just encourage people to not be afraid, seek this stuff out. And it's awesome. It's all awesome. It's a wild world, we live in, but it's a beautiful world. And there's I think one thing that all these experiences have given to me is I think there's a big kind of cosmic joke where humans we are kind of the butt of the joke. I think a lot of times because we're so sure of stuff. We're so sure of our worldview, and yet we live in just tiny bubbles, like tiny civilized bubbles of just bouncing off each other and egoically. And it's it's just, you know, I think it's very humorous, and because you get out there, you know, these bubbles of civilization are very, very small, you know, and there's a lot more conscious like conscious beings that, hey, good, bad, or whatever, they just are, you know, but they exist. Yeah, it's just cool, you know. It's all expanded my view of life itself so much, you know, that I would never trade it. You know, I love living in the world as I have kind of come to see it, you know.
I think that's one of the most important things as well. You had mentioned to me earlier that you're also a writer, so I want to make sure that that I give you some time to share about that, how people can you know, follow your writing or reach out to you if they wanted to ask you questions specifically about what you were talking about.
Sure, man. Totally. Yeah, you know, I do. I've always done a lot of writing. Right now, I've got a thing going on Substack. It's a kind of internet platform just for writing. I post my stuff on there. It's you can find it at Cebstack, which is my name, CEB, and then stack, STACK .substack, SUB stack.com. So that's where you can find my writing. I wrote a piece recently called Sasquatch and Elves, and it goes over some of my experiences, and then it goes over, you know, just a lot of other experiences that friends of mine have had, which that's a really fun piece to read. But yeah, then a lot of my other stuff I write is kind of like, I'd say kind of satirical worldview, like just looking at the world, writing about different subjects, going on in the world and everything, kind of I also do stand-up comedy. I really enjoy doing that. So my stuff is kind of funny, kind of edgy, kind of out there, just like me. So,
awesome.
So yeah, so that's that. If you want to send me a message or something, it's easy to contact me on Instagram. You can find me by my name, Ceb Land, or I think my Instagram handle is like Cebtastic, CEBTASTIC or whatever, Cebtastic. But yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure that is in the show notes. But Ceb, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing what you've experienced over the years in the Pacific Northwest. And be sure to reach out in the future if anything else interesting comes your way. But thanks again for coming on.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's really great talking with you as well. And yeah. Thanks to all your guests for listening and supporting you and what you do. I love your show. So have a blessed day, man.
You too. Thanks, Ceb.
Bye.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.